Good morning and good evening, everybody. I'm Kamel Younes from Tunis. I'm a journalist, academic, activist in some think tanks, strategic studies, mainly about security in Africa and Euro-Mediterranean region. Uh, we have to discuss, the suggestion is to discuss or to take part in discussion of why we have who would be who should be the responsible of the content moderation of media and social media. There is a big discussion now everywhere, including in US after Republican and Democrats last conflict or last different point of view that we followed. And we had this kind of discussion uh, in Tunisia for several time, for long time. For long term, the question used to be during last decades in Tunisia, in North Africa, in the so-called authoritarian regime, including in Africa and MENA region, if the state, the government, could be the main player in regulating the content moderation of media and social media, which should be the private sector or independent union of journalists, independent civil society NGOs, or the private companies, the private businessmen. And if we have to be clear, we have to start by asking why the government should not regulate content moderation of media. It used to be big question for a long time, and it's now again a new question why the government should not regulate the content moderation of social media. But to be honest, we have more and more different point of view, including in some democratic countries like Tunisia. After 10 years of experiences, we have this conflict of point of view and position. We have the same conflict and the same gap between Democrats and Republicans in the US, between Trump and his enemies when he is talking about fake news. But we still have this discussion in authoritarian regime in MENA and Africa region. But after Arab Spring, after some mistakes, and we discovered that freedom was misused, and we have new fake news, new manipulation, and we have some lobbying and money lobby, political lobby, who had bad impact in freedom and accelerated the failure of democratization process and democratization, especially in media level. The result was that we had bad impact on public sphere debates, manipulation on social media by money, by political groups, by some government, by some ministers, and the result is instability, weak state, and bad working atmospheres and bad business environment for the country in general. And the result is more and more we have a lot of people, including from within the elite, who are asking a minimum of role of the government, and the government has to intervene. The second scenario is the independent high commission of regulating media, and you have idea about some experiences and in European countries like France, UK, and in UK there is the example or the model of so-called Article 19. There is the example of model of BBC, British Broadcasting Corporation, where there is minimum of balance between the government role and the media and professional role, because the money is given by the government, by the parliament, but with BBC value and BBC ethics. But there is some red lines in BBC and in some European High Commission of regulating media. There is no way to have 100% freedom to discuss all security and military and foreign policy questions. But for example, in Tunisia, we don't have this line, and the result that we had manipulation, for example, in discussing Libya questions or some other regional conflict. We have some media, some TV, some social media connected, supporting Emirat, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Haftar. The others are supporting Qatar, Turkey, and NATO. And we have this conflict, and the High Commission elected by the government 7 years ago is incapable now. There is no, it can't, even if the group has money, respectable intellectual, academic, and journalists, they can't intervene and they can't control, and or at least they can't guarantee minimum of credibility of news and the respect of professionalism, not manipulation. The result, to conclude, I think in the end we have to find or to look for minimum of balance between the government role, the independent High Commission for Policy Content Regulation and Moderation, elected by the government, with green light from civil society and NGOs, but the justice has to intervene in some case, including when we have some fake news and we have manipulation of this freedom of expression in the wrong way. And we have to guarantee the minimum of stability and the minimum of environment for business to guarantee that this freedom is useful and not bad choice to justify to coming back or going back to dictatorship and to autocratic regimes. Thank you.